welcome back. So in the last video we talked about, our offense and defense, kind of how our system. If you're a football guy, this is pretty much our, spread offense, and how kind of our system. So again, if you're going to run this, it's a system. It's how you do everything. So it maximizes, again, combined arms. It maximizes, I talked about their Alcineus principle, asymmetry. It maximizes ambush mentality. So you put those all together in the technique that we call the lure and trap. So we really put this in so now we're going into the offense part of it. So in the previous video, we talked about the defense, how you lure people in, and then you hit them from the flank and cloverleaf them and so on and so forth. You'll notice this one's very similar, except now we're on the offense and we're attacking. Okay, so let's say you're moving up. So our movement technique that we use, we call the Lazy Trident. And it's Trident to sound cooler than, Lazy W or something like that. So if our movement of direction is this way, so we always move this way. This is our movement formation that we prefer. So you usually have one element up front, and this is your hunters. Self-explanatory what they do. The next element, they're meant to go on where you think they'll hit contact most likely. Then you set up your second element on an echelon where you think it's less likely, right? More cover and conceal, depends on terrain and so on and so forth. But anyway, that's your second element. What we'll typically call these folks is like your destroyers, your tank destroyers, and so on. And then your last element trails behind it. Okay, this is your reserve. What's important here is they stay out of contact so they can be used. And I'll explain more about that here in just a second. So they're moving along, and ideally they encounter the enemy. Okay, so again, using the same principle, and this is not a new technique. Everyone seems to know this one. Their job is to engage them and to gain fire superiority. But remember, going back to they need to fix them. This gunfight is incredibly important, and people don't get this right because they'll just start shooting and not understand what we're trying to achieve. They have to believe they're going to be destroyed. There has to be this is not just a static situation. They need to be bounding forward. They need to be making fire commands. Sure, they can maneuver flanks here. This is a very dynamic, lively fight. Ideally, if they can destroy them, terrific. But the whole idea is to pull them toward each other. There's a tendency for two forces, when they start fighting, they will be drawn together. So much so, it's even ideal if they're able to move back a little bit and draw them forward. That is best. But as second best is to gain fire superiority and keep them pinned down. That is second best. Once that occurs, that allows our destroyers to move up onto their flank. And notice we're going to create the D here in just a minute. They're going to move up to their flank and then engage them from an unexpected direction. Now, most people know this is coming. Anybody that's been, any kind of varsity or kind of infantry will know this should be coming. But then you have your third element. Now, here's where you have to make your decision. So the decision is going to be, notice they're going to set up a support by fire position. They're going to set up what we call another support by fire position. We call that support by fire 1, support by fire position 2. But now you have a third option. So if they've drawn themselves forward, they move up. Now we can either send them up the middle, and they would open the gate like this. So they would send them up the middle, and we use this technique if we're attacking to seize or attacking to breach. They're going to come up the middle, and we're going to open the gate. So we'll shift fire, and they'll shift fire 1, which, if we quadrify this, they'll shift fire off of 1, and they'll shift fire, and they're just going to open this gate this way, they're going to open the gate this way, and they're going to assault right up the middle. That's kind of how that works. However, if we're going to maneuver to destroy someone, as we talked in our previous videos, this is the decisive point. this is where we need to be. So we have to get there. So then they're going to move in a clover leaf and get behind and set up what we call support by fire position number 3. Once this is achieved, you have really achieved checkmate on your opponent because you've gotten behind them, and now we go into combined arms, we go into all the 3 principles that we've talked about. Now, again, as people seen a lot, the doctrinistas or whatever say, well, you have a direct fire control problem. Again, on the whiteboard, you do, I guess. Remember, you have ranges, you have terrain, you have on and on and on. What we typically do to take the even further step to mitigate this is once our enveloping gets past what we call our phase line, we have a name for it, this group here breaks down, and they will typically move behind the enveloping force and become the new reserve. Now this takes a while, and this is where strikers have been so good at. But this is where we set up, so at the end of our offense, this would be support by fire position 2 and support by fire position number 3. If you've noticed what we've done, we've really just kept shifting around. And then at this point, then we make a decision. Are they assaulting across and they're shifting fire? Or are they assaulting across and they're shifting and lifting fire? So that's kind of our base plan, how we set it up off of our Lazy Trident. Now, knowing that this same offense can be run by a fire team, can be run by a squad, platoon, company, battalion, we run it all echelons, and we find it just as effective as at any you just run it. It's the same concept. But so in which way you can set this up. So again, let's set it up the other way. Okay, so in this scenario, notice, let's say we're moving this direction, all right, and all of a sudden you receive, you're getting attacked or whatever, you see the enemy is to your left. Well, the same kind of principle applies. All that's going to happen is this element will turn and they become the hunters. They will then move up, and that becomes support by fire position number 2. And they can either come up the middle or they'll come around and do the envelopment. It's say, you're on this way, let's say we're echeloned to this direction. And the enemy, for whatever reason, appears here. Or you find him here. Well, that's easy because then they become support by fire position number 1. They'll immediately become support by fire position number 2. Now they can either come up the middle, as we described on that decision, either to seize or breach, or they can come around and then make the envelopment. Actually, you have to rewind that one. Oh, yeah, that's right. They'll actually come around and do the envelopment if you're going to destroy them. Okay, so the Lazy Trident that's our movement technique. It's everything we do as we try to always set up this lure and trap. The idea is to draw them forward if best, get them behind, get to their flank, then make the decision: are we going to seize this terrain? We're going to breach it by coming around, or are we going to try and go for the envelopment? Remember, you can envelop by fire. So if you can't get there, just physically can't get there because of terrain or time, you can use mortars or artillery fire. The important thing is to create an envelopment. So you create enveloping by fire to get behind them through fire to keep them from withdrawing. So for whatever reason, you get support by fire position 1 in, support by fire position number 2 in, but you can't get to support by fire position number 3, you can use fires in order to set the envelopment, and then you can then maneuver up the middle or cross, or as you see fit, in order to destroy them. The key is this is set up so they cannot get away. Otherwise, you're just pushing on them. Another third option you can do, and if you have rotary wing, you can do a vertical envelopment, and that gets them much faster. Okay, so the question is why do we use this offense, and why is it different than maybe you've seen in the past? So the real big reason is what I just described. Is typically what most of the time happens is when you're attacking somebody, and you try to go for a flank if this is not fixed, most of the time they're going to either bound back, they're going to get away, and you're just pushing on people. You're just pushing on people, and you don't have the psychological shock that once you get there, it creates. Remember, the rear naked choke is decisive, but you got to get it. Once you get here, you cut their retreat line. You cut where they've come from. You keep them from getting away. You keep them in place. That's why the envelopment is so potent. The enemy's not expecting to fight in that direction. They're expecting to fight here. They're expecting to fight here. They're expecting to fight here. Rarely are they expecting to fight behind them. And once they know the enemy's behind them and their line of retreat is cut, they come unraveled. They lose all their cohesion and either surrender or they can't get away. And once you get behind them, then it's merely you're in a position where you can use indirect fires and you can use all the principles we've talked about, to outfight them. So without the envelopment, you tend to push on people. Like in Afghanistan, you get a direct fire, they bound, but they just get away. You just push on them, they just get away, they just get away, they just get away. So until the only way to stop them from getting away or to create that psychological shock is the decisive point is behind them. You have to get there and try to attack them from behind. That's why this works so well. Now, how do you get there? Again, you have to set this up by trying to draw them forward and all the different envelopments. Basically, how we run that is how you get there. We've run it several times and it works. We've had it. Our squads have run it. Our fire teams have run it, and over and over and over again, it's just proven that how much it's able to work. But when it doesn't work, it's usually because the hunting element didn't do a good job to create that tunnel vision. Didn't keep them, by the collar, as Pat would say. He grabs by the nose before you kick him in the rear. Okay, so the Lazy Trident, how we set it up for offense and defense. Again, that's all based on kind of this ambush mentality. It's based on fighting asymmetrically, and then once we get there, then we use combined arms and really destroy the enemy. All right. That's the lure and trap. All right, hunt, raise, kill.